Hello everyone, I Yash Gupte welcome you all to the first episode of the Strategic Insights, PIC's podcast on national security, defense strategy, and evolving threats shaping our world. In this episode, released on the occasion of Kargil Vijay Diwas, we revisit one of the most defining moments in India's military history, the Kargil War of 1999. The Kargil War was fought in 1999 high up in the mountains of the Himalayas. It was a war during which our soldiers showed incredible courage, strength, and resilience. Over 500 brave Indian soldiers sacrificed their lives to push back the intruders from Pakistan and protect our borders. So, every year on 26th of July, we observe the Kargil Vijay Diwas to remember the sacrifice and celebrate India's victory against Pakistan. It's a day to honor our heroes and reflect on their bravery. On this special occasion, we are privileged to have with us two highly respected military veterans, Major General Nitin Gadkari, Director PIC, and Lieutenant General Vinayak Patankar, convener of the Center for National Security Studies at PIC, who not only served during the Kargil War but bring deep insights from the experience of the war. But before we proceed further, let me briefly introduce our guests. Major General Nitin Gadkari has a distinguished career of over 37 years in the Indian Army. He commanded an artillery regiment in the Strike Corps during the period of Kargil operation. Later, he commanded an artillery brigade in the counter-terrorism role in Jammu and Kashmir. Also, he was part of the team which received training on the Bofors gun in Sweden and got the first gun to India, which played a decisive role during the Kargil War of 1999. Speaking about Lieutenant General Patankar, a former general officer commanding 15 Corps, Lieutenant General Vinayak Gopal Patankar served the Indian Army for 40 years. An Army aviation pilot, paratrooper, and gunner, he was commander of the 28th Infantry Division, also known as the Vajra Division, during the Kargil War. Later, he also commanded the 15 Corps. Lieutenant General notable experience encompassed active participation in the 65, 71, and the Kargil Wars. So, thanks a lot, Generals, for joining us. To begin with, I would like to open the floor to both of you to reflect on the significance of the Kargil War, not just as military leaders who served during that time, but also the individuals who witnessed history unfold in real time. So, over to you, Generals.
So, good afternoon. I'm your co-host today and also a co-answerer to the whole podcast. So, it's almost on the eve of Kargil Vijay Diwas that we are doing this podcast. And I wish to take this opportunity to tell our viewers that you were almost in the thick of things. And how did it feel with a bird's eye view from where you're sitting? And I think they will understand what I'm saying. Yeah. So, you're GOC 28 Infantry Div when this thing was happening. As I understand from my experience, 28 Infantry Div is one of the toughest postings. The GOC 28 Infantry Div is a very difficult and challenging appointment, primarily because you got both the roles, also the conventional role deployed on the LC and the infiltration role. Just for the sake of our viewers, would you be able to tell us what does it mean to command a division like 28 Infantry Division in the thick of things?
Firstly, thank you for having me on this very, very important occasion. For me, it's very nostalgic. I can recall almost to the day the way the things happened. But, and you're quite right, 28th Infantry Division then and even today is probably the largest division of the Indian Army. In fact, just to give the viewers an idea, during the Kargil War or just prior to Kargil War, my division had almost 7 brigades.
Oh, right.
An ordinary division, a regular division is supposed to have 3 and an artillery brigade. Mine had 7 brigades plus an artillery brigade. So it was huge. And that is because the area of operation was also, the line of control that was in my responsibility was over 200 kilometers frontage. So it required that. And you're also very correctly, you put it very correctly by saying that conventional operations in terms of taking care of the line of control and making sure that the Pakistanis are never up to any mischief, and also counter-terrorist operations, preventing infiltration. So there were a number of things, and it used to happen 24/7. To add more degree of difficulty, there used to be regular firing. Those days there was no ceasefire. So artillery fire was quite common. Infantry weapons was almost a daily occurrence. So it was a tough assignment, yes.
So, 28th Infantry Division and the formation boundary of now 8 and then 3 Infantry Division, 1-to-1 Infantry Brigade, which was originally in place
Right.
when the Kargil operation started. So, you had one of the brigades which was bordering the Mashko area. Did you ever feel that your division was vulnerable to infiltration the way it did later, and the terrorists could use that to get inside the valley from the east and the north of your division?
Yes, very much so. In fact, that's an excellent question because, see, one of the major infiltration avenues was the 28th Divisional sector. Because of the degree of difficulty of terrain, it was difficult to prevent infiltration. So that much easier for the infiltrator to get through. And although the terrain differed from west to east as we went towards Mashko, and the distance from the line of control to the place where we were, deployed, kept on varying. Some places it was as close as 2 kilometers, and some places it was more than 10 kilometers. So infiltration was a regular occurrence. So therefore, we are already vulnerable from the point of view of possibility of infiltration. And when the intrusions in Mashko came to light, then obviously we said we may be the next route or next place where they'll try intrusion. Also because the heights were already held by the Pakistanis. We were at a disadvantage in the Gurez Valley, which was the last brigade just before Mashko. So the point is that as far as the infiltration part is concerned, it was already happening. And since they were dominating by holding the line of control, the heights on the line of control, it was easy for them to not only infiltrate, but also even creep forward and capture some more area. They already held the aces, they were holding the cards. So that was certainly a major concern, yes.
So as we know, the whole genesis of the Kargil War was that India and Pakistan have a standing agreement where certain posts which are winter occupied, winter vacated, you leave it in winters, come back to posts which are more, which can be more easy to hold on,
Yes.
and then again occupy them in summer. So this understanding was going on for years.
Absolutely.
But in that particular year, Pakistan betrayed our trust and occupied or didn't leave the post that they were supposed to leave, and in turn occupied the one that we had left.
Right.
So my question comes from the fact is that could you give people a sense of what we are talking about in terms of leaving of this winter occupied, non-occupied posts, and what kind of a high altitude terrain actually compels you to do something like that?
Yeah, again, a very pertinent question. And for viewers to visualize what kind of challenge it is to hold those posts at those heights. You see, apart from the altitudes, which the lowest post that we had was more than 11,000 feet. And the highest went up to almost 15,000. So that was the first challenge of the altitude itself. Secondly, particularly as you went towards the east, bordering Mashko, that is Gurez Valley, and east of it towards Badawab and Chakwali, that area is completely treeless, no vegetation whatsoever. Very rocky outcrop, no plain ground anywhere, very rugged. I mean, as rugged as they come. So lack of vegetation also affected the oxygen content. So the effect of altitude, which already has problems in because rarefied atmosphere, it got enhanced in terms of difficulty because of lack of oxygen. So that was the situation. Then when it comes to winter, the snowfall is so heavy on posts, on an average, anything up to 25 to 30 feet of snowfalls. And the only thing you can do during winter is keep removing the snow from your bunkers. There is no question of any movement because it was higher than man height. So how do you actually traverse, the area? And it's soft snow. You don't know where the crevices are. So it's absolutely dangerous to try and even traverse that area. So with this background, the understanding, informal understanding though it was that, okay, we vacate these posts which are completely, snowbound and very heavily at that, and we reoccupy them come spring. And you're quite right that they betrayed us and they occupied our post which we had vacated. So that certainly was a betrayal. There's no question.
As you know, the Kargil War started with rumors about some infiltrators coming and occupying our posts when that some of the Gujars came and reported. And we initially, in fact, some of the formations also thought that there are a couple of terrorists hanging around there. So my question was, when did you as GOC 28 Div, when did you realize that we are having a serious problem now in our neighboring formation? And what was your reaction to that? How did that sequence of events flow for you?
Yes, actually, all along with the kind of deployment, with the kind of weapon systems that they were using, obviously, as we discovered the intrusion, I mean, we meaning in Mashko Valley, and of course it was common knowledge. Everything that was happening was being fed to us. And in my area, of course, it was the regular Pakistani troops which were occupying the post. But initially, the way it was made out was they are mujahids, And to make the story convincing, they used to be dressed in tracksuits and stuff like that. Of course, heavily, good winter clothing, because you have to wear three layers of clothing before you can really manage to survive. But no uniforms. It was a ruse actually. Basically, they were all regular troops. In a sense, you can call them quasi-regular because initially they were the Northern Light Infantry troops, which were something like our Assam Rifles. Later on, when in active operations, they were made into a regular regiment, which was just a matter of change of nomenclature. They were exactly like any other infantry battalion of the Pakistanis. So we knew that Mujahids wouldn't be, equipped like this kind of weapon. We were quite used to the kind of weapon systems the Mujahids were using during infiltration. They used to even carry, missile launchers, grenade launchers. But the heavy machine guns, the kind of deployment, and the manner in which they were operating was absolutely clear that they are regular troops. This has to be the Pakistani army. And that belief was then reinforced by the fact that in my area as well, you see, they were also trying to reinforce their posts because they thought that since they have come into one area, so we might try and push in this area too, as a counter-offensive. So they were building up, and they got troops all the way from their Punjab deployment. Opposite me, on one occasion, we caught one of the chaps who actually, one of their patrol was going, and so was our patrol going in that area. And either they panicked or they ran, and one of them fell down. and we captured him. And he had a paybook on him, which had clearly mentioned that he was from 27th Sindh Battalion. So when we checked our own intelligence records, 27th Sindh Battalion was supposed to be opposite Lahore. Opposite Amritsar, on the Lahore sector. So we said this couldn't be 27, but then we realized they have withdrawn troops from there to reinforce troops because they didn't know where to find additional troops. So it was absolutely clear that it was not only regular Pakistani army, it was reinforced Pakistani army.
So, just to give you a timeline, we detected that infiltration somewhere around 14th of May. The war ended somewhere on the 26th of July. A good about 70 days.
Yes.
In 70 days, as you know, so many things happened. The Tolo link, 0.5194, then Pimple, Rocky Knob, then it was then the red line to Tiger Hill and
That's right. 4850. Yeah.
Almost 70 days had gone, and you were sitting next to that action happening. It couldn't have been an easy time at all. Things must be happening in your area. Something must be going on in your mind. Now you have to tell us, what is it that happened and what did you do as a GOC to so-called counter what the Pakistanis were doing?
Yeah, firstly, when it started, one couldn't imagine that it's going to last that long because we didn't know the extent of intrusion. As the intrusions came to light, then of course we realized it's going to be a long drawn affair. But that came later. Initially, when the intrusions were detected, I had two major concerns. One was to make sure that similar intrusions don't happen in my area. So my first action immediately within 24 hours was to reinforce all my posts on the line of control. Once that was done, I of course did extensive touring to check that we are in a strong position and there's no way we are going to lose any ground here. Simultaneously, since like you mentioned earlier, my other task was counter-terrorist operations in the rear areas. And those were 24/7. I mean, there were 3 RR sectors which are equivalent to a brigade, in fact larger than a brigade because the RR battalion strengths are more. So they were heavily engaged in counter-terrorist operations. And we had a counter-terrorist operation grid. They were deployed, each one had their own area to make sure that nothing happens there. My immediate concern was, now we have to make sure that the troops on the line of control, particularly in Moscow, who are actually engaged in a battle with the enemy, must not have to look over their shoulder for any logistics, fuel, food, ammunition, medical supplies, and so on. So the lines of communication had to be kept open. So my next biggest worry was that now that the lines of communications are so vital, large convoys were going there, 50 vehicles, 80 vehicles carrying logistics. And
so just for our viewers, that to go to Dras, Kargil, that sector, one had to pass through Sonmarg. And right. Sonmarg and northwards fell into the area of 28th Infantry Division.
Because very close to Bandipura and that area. So the supply lines went through my area towards the 8 Div sector where the battle was. So that was my biggest worry, that there should be no fifth columnist or terrorist activity to disrupt these lines of communication. They must remain open 24/7. So I had to withdraw troops within the first 24, 26 hours from counter-terrorist operations to guarding the line of control. And one very interesting thing happened, where I was then quite sure in my mind that the lines of communication are going to remain open because I'm heavily guarding them. And no way any kind of damage. See, somebody blows up a bridge. To launch another bridge, it will take minimum 18 hours, 24 hours. And that delay is not acceptable. So that was why this had to be done. 24, 48 hours, 76 hours passed, not a single activity on the line of communication. So I was quite convinced. I said, I don't think these guys are taking advantage of the fact that we are engaged on the line of control. So let's create mayhem
Panic
in
behind.
the rear areas. And to boost my confidence further, I'll tell you an incident where an artillery column was moving with these large guns. They were moving at a fast pace, and one of the guns turned turtle and went below the road. Now, to bring that heavy gun on top, back on the road and put it back on its wheels was no easy task for the men. There were just a handful of them there. But of course, they put their shoulder to the wheel and they were doing this. Hundreds of villagers came running from the local villages, local area. They all put their shoulder. Before you knew it, the gun was back on the thing, convoy moved. And then the men said, the villagers came and said, कि साहब अगर किसी और इमदाद की कोई और हेल्प की ज़रूरत हो तो मुझे हमें बता देना, हम लोग हैं साहब इधर, So I felt so nice about it. Of course, it was something that we had undertaken, winning hearts and minds and so on. So probably it was something to do with that. But the fact is, that boosted my confidence. And 72 hours later, my troops were back on counter-terrorist operations after that. So, in a sense, after having made sure that we are secure, now my next thing was, how do I help?
So I put you to the next question. That I'm sure that as the Indian Army tactics are, when the enemy pushes you, you push back, the counter-offensive thing. And I'm sure as a GOC must have been going in your mind that let me do something so as to relieve some pressure, if at all any. So did you take up any of such operations?
Yes, a very, very memorable event took place. And I'll give that as an example of what was in my mind and what we tried to do. You see, like I mentioned, in the Gurez Valley, the enemy was occupying all the heights and they were dominating us. I used to jokingly tell every visiting dignitary or anyone to say, he dominates us so much, he knows what I had for breakfast this morning. So it was that kind of, visible domination that they had, and of course, by fire. So I said, is this an opportunity for me to try and change this, at least get a foothold on the line of control? It'll give me an additional advantage that I'll be, you see, my observation was restricted up to the ridge line. What was going on behind it, I didn't know. Obviously, all the logistics supporting Moscow Valley for the enemy were going behind that line. So I said, if I have a foothold, I'll be able to observe on the other side and disrupt and fire artillery or whatever. So I was very keen to do that. But it was easier said than done because, like I said, no cover, rocky surface. There was no way you could climb up. And even by day it was difficult, what to talk of doing it at night. And although I gave that task and I said, make an offensive plan and within our capabilities, this is one thing we can do and let's try and do it. So after a great deal of study of the ground and possibilities, everybody said, so we'll buy lots of casualties. I said, yes, I know. And I'm not going to unnecessarily lose a lot of officers and men just to capture a small piece of ground. But nevertheless, if we can do this, it'll help us in the future. And almost here, I must say, the most of us are familiar with the Battle of Simagad, where Tanaji Maluksari climbed up a cliff. Of course, the legend goes that he used that. But other than that, the fact is he climbed an 85 degrees climb, and that was the most unexpected area. And so he managed to attack the enemy from there and capture the fort. Here, it was somewhat similar. If you couldn't go along the ridgeline, the way to climb up would be along the nalas, which came cascading down, similar 80, 85 degrees depression. So if you had to climb, it was like a mountaineering expedition. You had to fix ropes and climb. And all along the enemy would see you, so he wouldn't let you do that. One day, in fact, when we were doing this, I said, okay, plan it. If we get an opportunity, we're going to do this. One day when I came out of my bunker, and I found it was a very gloomy day, heavy rain, cloud, sleet. Just before it starts snowing, there is sleet. And visibility was not more than 50 meters. It was that bad. So I said, this is my opportunity. So when I checked, I said, what is the situation in Gurais Valley? They said, sir, we can't see anything. The complete ridge line is under cloud. I said, this is the time when we can climb up because the enemy can't see anything. Sure enough, one of the Havildars of that battalion raised his hand. So I called him my Tanaji Malusare. And he said, sir, give me 4 people. I will climb up, fix ropes, climb up, and then my rest of the company, my 100 mates will come up. They did exactly that. The enemy got no inkling of this happening. And nobody in his senses would try and venture out in that kind of weather. But these boys, they climbed up in that adverse weather, fixed ropes, went up. Once they were there, they whistled up the rest of the company. They went and occupied that post. It's called the Bajrang post. It is there even today.
Still today.
Unfortunately, exactly like Srinagar operation, where
We lost the boy.
we lost Tanaji. Here I lost that Havildar. Havildar Gill was his name. Of course, we sent up a citation and he got the Veer Chakra, but that was small consolation for the kind of victory we had. So we did a minor offensive, and thereafter we also did another thing with Bofors, but that I'll tell you later.
Okay. Now that it is stated that in the Kargil War, the artillery did a wonderful job and Bofors was the battle-winning factor. So my direct question to you was, did you have any Bofors? Did you use any one of them in any of your operation?
Yes, I was given Bofors with a lot of riders. See, I had no Bofors of my own.
Oh, okay.
But when this
On
thing
the other.
happened, I was given precisely 3 Bofors guns, one troop, which came all the way from Western Command. And I was told they are very precise, it's a very precious kind of weapon system. And don't you risk it anywhere. But, soldiers being soldiers, when opportunity is staring you in the face, you want to take that extra help. And I had a very dynamic, artillery commander there, the CEO of the regiment. And he said, sir, I said, can we see from here, we may not be able to engage the enemy to help out my, friends across the, in Moscow. But if we can push the guns eastwards, we'll be able to, we'll be within range and we'll, put some harassing fire and things like that. But there was no track, there was no road. So he said, sir, we'll work out something. And here's what they did. They put a dozer in front and there was a small track, foot track, which was supposed to be the formation cut, as it is called, before it is turned into a track and then a road. So along that formation cut, the dozer went with the Bofors
Going behind.
and God bless that weapon. They had their auxiliary power unit, so it didn't require a truck to pull it. It could go on its own power. So behind the dozer went this gun, the 2 guns, and they moved just behind this dozer, almost yard by yard, meter by meter, and went and deployed. The guns deployed, where's the ammunition? So this is where then some friendly Air Force guys who were, bringing a lot of logistics, and they would go back empty. So I used to say, why don't you do a few shuttles and just transfer some of my Bofors ammunition to this? Because the guns without ammunition are only a decoration piece. So that happened. And then when we plastered the enemy from there, he was absolutely shaken because we took intercept. And they said, साहब यहाँ तो ये गोला आ ही नहीं सकता, लेकिन है तो ये 155 मिलीमीटर का बोफर का लगता है साहब, लेकिन ऐसा तो गुरेज में है नहीं, हमें पता है कि वहाँ कोई बोफर्स गन नहीं है, पता नहीं क्या काफिरों ने कहाँ से लाया. So it was like setting the cat amongst the pigeons, and it was very, very nice. And for me, Bofors were the hero, and the gunners were the heroes. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your thoughts about what was in your sector, which I'm sure must have been one hell of a time, because 70, 75 days in midst of war happening
Tense,
next
yeah.
to you, you're as good as in that war. Yeah.
Now talking of Bofors, I've always known you to be the champion of Bofors. You went to Sweden to bring the first Bofors. You were trained on the Bofors in Sweden with the original equipment manufacturer, and you brought the first set of guns to India. You also commanded a regiment of Bofors thereafter.
I was posted, not commanded, posted.
All right. So you tell us about this gun, because, like I said, Bofors, firstly, just next to the infantry, artillery was the heroes, and for artillery, the hero was Bofors. There's no question about it.
So my sojourn with Bofors goes back to my young days when I was a captain and just finished my LGSC and an instructor tenure in school. By the virtue of it, I think I may have made it to the list of people who went to Sweden.
Yeah.
So Bofors was a quantum leap. It was a technological innovation, a transformation, whichever way
a generation gap.
Generation gap.
Yeah.
From IFGs and 130s going into 155 and Bofors, was it? But one thing I wish to state here, that the Indian mind, and that's what we thought there also as a captain, the Indian mind is so good in catching up things or jugaad, that we had some IKGs with us, the JSU instructors. They are also gone. We had almost a 3 months more tenure there. In 2 months' time, they were teaching the Swedes what is wrong and what is right with the gun. It's so good. We had mastered that gun even before it came to India. And all these guys, of course, officers are always good because they have the sense of education and understanding.
Right.
But imagine coming in from the man whom you thought you will not be able to cope up with the technology.
Right.
He could master it so much. And that is how, at that point in time, Bofors ran into a lot of scandal and all that, which was unwarranted as far as the army was concerned.
Right.
But these people exploited this equipment to such a great extent that even the Swedes would not have thought that we will be able to use. And that's how Bofors actually later went on to become the war-winning factor.
In fact, like they say, the proof of the pudding is in eating. When the Bofors actually fired in anger, you see, firing in practices is one thing, but firing at an actual enemy and in an actual battle situation is something where the
test of
the quality and everything is
up,
proved. Your quality of your training, quality of the equipment, and everything else that goes with it. So tell me, how is it? What kind of ingenuity did the artillery commanders use? Because I'm told that they even used Bofors in direct shooting, which is an unheard of thing for a medium gun, which is a long-range weapon system. But what would you like to say?
So that's why I said all this was possible because of the technological innovation to transformation of equipment there. One is the charge system. The Bofors has numerous charges. That time it was 8 and 9 charge, which was not heard about in any. What does the charge system do? Charge system is able to take the round farther and farther and more accurately rather than just going. Now, its known range was 27 kilometers, but high altitude, as you know, it hit 35 kilometers.
Yes.
Two things it did. One is it hit behind the enemy lines where they least expected any artillery to come.
Right.
And second, it hit them straight on their face where they never thought that we'll be able to.
That's right.
So from what accounts I have read and what I have seen, that the Bofors batteries firing directly on Tiger Hill or on .5197, all these the enemy was shell-shocked into going straight into the bunkers.
Right.
And even then the bunkers were... Also, the variety of ammunition that Bofors had, we had never had. So while at one end you could be plastered with a HE shell on the ground, at the same time they might have an airbus coming from top, or one coming with a penetration mode into your bunker. So the variety of ammunition that Bofors brought was the main reason why the Pakistanis actually were taken by surprise.
Yeah, I would even go to an extent of saying that they were shaken.
Shaken. Yeah.
Because I've read a few accounts written by the Pakistani officers who were on the other side. They've written their personal experience of the war. And one of the things that stands out in all their narrations is the Indian artillery was terrific. I mean, they, I shouldn't use any profanity, but I mean, they really shook us from our roots, you know. So he said, infantry in any case were very bold, but the artillery shattered us. There was hardly any way to make bunkers strong because, you know, it was so difficult to carry equipment on top to build bunkers with cement and stuff like that. So it was more like sangars, you know, just rock upon rock.
Yeah,
and they said with every burst, the sangars would go, you know,
fly off.
Yeah. So
Fly
they said
off,
we're absolutely scared of the Indian artillery. The other thing I wanted to also ask you is, like you said, it was a quantum jump in technology. We graduated from the Indian field gun of 105 millimeter caliber. We even had the Russian guns of 130, which is essentially a flat trajectory weapon and not to be used in mountains. But we, like you said, with our ingenuity, we were using it. And here comes a gun which is technologically of another, two generations beyond. So did that bring about a sort of a change of mindset in the Indian artillery, the gunners, which probably today now we see in terms of our
the new
equipment, which you are better familiar than I am.
So I'll give just how the quantum leap started. We had never heard of a gun moving on its own.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even first time when we saw it, we didn't realize this gun can move its own. And I must narrate a very surprising anecdote here. Just before we had landed in Sweden, the Swedes had sold the same gun to the Nigerians.
Mm-hmm.
So it was FS-77A. We had B version.
Yeah.
A. Now what was A? A was petrol version. Why? Because Nigeria petrol was cheap.
Yeah.
3 months there, and when we asked them, they said the Nigerians did nothing else but drive the gun. They didn't do anything else. So, whereas we, like I already mentioned, we were masters at that, the whole equipment. But the ability of the gun to move on its own without its prime mover, which is a Scania, which is a vehicle, allowed it to move on narrow mountain roads and maneuver in small nalas and get to places from where they could engage enemy far.
Mm-hmm.
This ingenuity came with this kind of and then it carried forward. Of course, Bofors was a 155 mm 39 caliber. We switched on thereafter to 45 calibers, the Dhanush. As you know, caliber is, the second part of the caliber is the length of the barrel. That is 45 times 155 mm is the length of the barrel.
Right.
And subsequently now we are into the era of 155 52 caliber gun, which is 52 times. And our latest is the ATAGS, that is the Advanced Towed Artillery Gun System, which is a quantum leap into technology. And not only that, it's a homegrown technology.
Right.
So ATAGS today comes with two variants. One, the Pune, homegrown
based,
Kalyani Industries, that is Bharat Forge is manufacturing, and the Tatas are manufacturing the same. Their unit is somewhere else. So ATAG, which is going to come into very soon, government has already given orders to I think 300 odd gun. It has got an increased range. It has got a range of now. The Bofors had a range of 27. Dhanush had about 38. Now it's going to 48 kilometers. So that means sitting at one place, you're able to interdict almost 50 kilometers behind. And when it comes to high altitude, as you would know, this range will get increased by 25%.
Yes.
So you're hitting way below their bases, logistic bases,
Right.
which is going to be one hell of a battle-winning advantage for Indian artillery. And apart from that, now fire control systems have become very robust. They got GPS navigation system.
Yeah.
They got a fire control radar. They got something on top. So it is an automated system through and through. So artillery has really moved way beyond normal thought process.
And it's so good to hear that, being a gunner myself, and the kind of weapon systems we were familiar with and used to where we are now. My chest swells with pride to hear all this. Really,
if you remember, so olden days they used to say the Russians used to use the artillery very boldly. You know?
Yes.
Now the Indians use a 100-gun concept in the
Kargil War. Yeah, that's right.
And it is documented that visibly the target was not seen, visibly from a distance from where the guns were firing. So devastating was the effect that it just blasted the target.
Right.
So that ingenuity of thought process came as the equipment gave you that ability. The commanders' minds also became more and more dynamic.
Yes, actually, I'm tempted to add as a footnote, but I'll come to that in a minute. So, from what you were saying, is it right to assume that in all future wars or battles, the artillery is going to play a very predominant part because of the enhancement of firepower, accuracy, range, and technology, everything?
I know my infantry friends will kill me if I say that. But Operation Sindoor is a very fine example of a contactless battle.
Right.
So, and as I was reading, after 9 targets that were hit on the first day, I think 6 of them were hit by the artillery.
Let me correct you, 7.
7. Okay, 7 were hit by the artillery. Okay, I was a little conservative. Shouldn't go wrong.
7 targets were hit by the artillery.
What does it tell you?
Yeah.
Contact battles are by and large now relegated to a swift air/artillery battles. And every war that is following is only showing that. It's not as if infantry and armor will ever go away, but it is that their use is going to be less and less, and only in terms when the war breaks out in a full spectrum that they'll come to use. In all small and short wars, I think artillery will rule the roost along with the air.
That's right. In fact, firepower is the key. Is the key.
Absolutely.
Whatever methodology, whatever devices, whatever equipment and systems that you use to deliver that firepower is a matter of selection of the systems
Commander,
of the commander. So artillery has moved into that league, I would say, where now it's you see, gone are the days. This again for the viewers, it may be of interest to know. Artillery was always considered as an area weapon. You know, it was not like a rifle. You know, you aim and try and hit a bullseye.
Pinpoint.
It was never supposed to be that. Today, artillery is that plus precision. Because of loitering munitions, because of smart munitions, you can actually target a bunker and hit it bullseye.
Sindoor is a very fine example.
Absolutely. And those 7 targets that were destroyed were all known, or whose location was known to us as the terrorist hideouts. And they were blasted. Now everybody is sort of clear as to what the artillery can do in any given situation.
So I'll take on. So you wanted to narrate as a last bit something that you had in mind, or?
No, this was the one that Sindoor was something where is the latest example of what the artillery has done or is capable of doing. That is what I wanted to say.
So thank you very much. It was, to me, a very illuminating talk. And especially, I like to bring to the viewers that Kargil War has been spoken about time and again. But areas which are people who were affected by Kargil War, who are neighboring, have never been spoken about. And here is one general who actually bore the brunt, looking at it, supported it from all the way, and maybe, for all he knows, slept much lesser than all of them put together.
Hardly any sleep those days, I remember.
Thank you very much for all the illuminating talk on this podcast,
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure our viewers will love it as much as I did.
Thank you. In fact, I did that too, and thanks for having me for this occasion.
Thank you, generals, for joining us today and sharing the untold stories of the Kargil War and offering your strategic perspectives which you had experienced during the Kargil War. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Your insights have really contributed and enlightened us and added immense depth to this conversation. It has been an honor to have you with us today. Also, please subscribe to PIC's YouTube channel and follow us on our social media handle. And thank you for being with us today as we remember, reflect, and pay tribute to the heroes of Kargil. Until next time, this is Yash Gupte signing off. Jai Hind.